All right, everybody, here I am again. Got started on the wrong thread on that last one. Sorry about that. But good morning, everybody. Tara here with a Wifey Wake Up podcast, getting rolling on the correct thread this time so that we can get this all recorded in the proper places. And this is really a part 2 to yesterday's podcast, which was why he is resistant to going to the counselor. I had to think about which title I had settled upon yesterday. So why is he resistant to going to the counselor or going back to the counselor? And this might be a long-term relationship, a marriage. And that can be extremely frustrating, right? Because you've been in this relationship, you're all in. It's like we're a team. Okay, why won't you participate with me like a team member? And there's a lot to that one. That one I highly recommend, if not just absolutely watch it, because it's almost like a prerequisite to understanding more of the context to this podcast. So check out episode number 59 as a prelude to this. So today we're talking about the surprising shifts that saved my marriage, what I did when he said no to counseling. Because what it comes down to really is you can't make someone do something. And even if you get them to go to the counselor and they're resistant, they're not all in, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for anyways. And I'm taking, like anything on Wifey School, I'm taking 20 some years of experience. And at that point, we were a good decade in, and I'm condensing it down. I'm making the cliff notes for you so that when you come to this hurdle, because these are hurdles that you inevitably go through, you encounter in a long-term relationship or a marriage. And if you can know how to handle them sooner than later, then you don't have to go through the years or the hardship that it takes to learn them. And you can feel brilliant and like a genius because you handled them like a boss. So that's what this is about. So this podcast is about the shifts that I made to change things. And it wasn't about asking him to do more or counting on him to do more. It was me deciding what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go to my notes because there are some really important shifts that were necessary. So again, go to episode number 59. Number 1 is accepting that him saying that he does not feel like he's being heard in the counseling session, because counselors tend to be very biased towards the women. And this is not unusual. This is very common and an extremely common reason why, if a man is not going to counseling, he's probably heard of this already, or if he's not going back to counseling, that means it's so likely that he's already experienced this, and he either is not telling you because he doesn't feel like he'll be understood anyways, or he's told you but you couldn't take it in. So prerequisite number 1, just consider for a moment that he's telling you the truth. Just like if your girlfriend was telling you a story and she didn't feel heard, maybe she had an altercation at the workplace, and she didn't feel heard at the workplace, maybe by HR, and you encourage her, of course, right, to find a way to be heard. And I implore, just to really not only save your relationship, but make it go with more ease into the future, you must consider that what he is telling you, or now that I'm telling you might be happening, is the truth. And if you consider that for a moment, then you can take it to the next step. And I'll tell you, it's really, really, really worth it, because it's not only going to take you through this current hurdle, it can really help you into the future. Okay. So that first prerequisite is so important, to consider that he's telling you the truth in words or in actions, that he is not being heard when he is going to, or considering going to, the counselor with you. So that's really important, step number 1. So that is something that I decided to do, is just accept, okay, he's telling me the truth. And what good does it do for me to either not accept that and continue trying to do what I'm trying to do, which is trying to get him to do things the way I think is the way to do them? Or option number 2, I can take what he's saying as the truth and give it a try try doing something remarkably different and see if that helps. And I decided to go with the latter. Now I'm going to give you a quick outline. If you want more details, this would be a mini course. If you'd like more details on how to get to this point and get to your own personal decisions and decision making, I can certainly put that together for you. But for the time being, I'll just lay out the basics. And this was really initially, I think I decided to make it more like a 3-month experiment and be all in. And by all in, I mean like no half-assing it, because it's like committing to an exercise program and maybe you want to fit into those old jeans and you're like, I'm going to give it a year, and then you give it a month. And of course and even a month, the first 2 weeks, you're all in. This third week, you're half in, and then it just dissipates from there. But you're absolutely not going to get the results that you're anticipating if you don't go all in. And so I really made a pact with myself. That's important to note. I made the pact with myself to be all in for 3 months. And that meant doing everything. And now I didn't have the strategy completely worked out. So that's partly why it was 3 months long and not just like 1 month of going all in, is I still had to devise a more detailed plan. And it's very important to note also that I didn't necessarily tell my husband that I was doing this. Actually, I didn't tell him at all. I just made the changes, because part of my experiment is kind of like doing a blind experiment, right? If the people in the experiment know about it, there's a placebo. Well, there's just the knowing, the effect that they can have on the experiment, not even just the placebo effect. And so I just decided I'm going to do this, and if this really works, I'll see the results. And that's, I think, like I said in my last podcast, what's really wonderful is, we know, and guys admit it too, they're simple, and women are the ones that are complicated. So I figured I should be able to see results pretty readily if these things are working. So that was really key. One, accepting that he is telling me the truth, that he is not being heard in counseling, and that's why he doesn't want to go. And number 2 is dedicating myself to change and just working this experiment. So here's specifically what I came up with myself. This might be different for you. However, I think these are principles that if you just tried them for yourself, likely would work. It's kind of a good general recipe. I am leaving out some specifics of what I did because, first of all, this was something that I did for several months, and I did lay out specific guidelines for myself, a good decade ago. And these are things that have continue to develop in phases for me, and have taken on a new look at different areas of life. But I think it's a good general recipe. Okay, so first of all, I created and implemented a game plan on what I could do to directly make the changes I wanted to see in my life. I didn't necessarily give up on my dreams, but I decided not to try to force or coerce my husband to do what I thought that he needed to do to make or what I thought were our dreams come true. And, this is kind of matter of fact. I was already doing that, and that wasn't working. So it's like, okay, what if I basically did a 180, did something totally different, and everything that I was saying to him at home or wanting to say at the counselor, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this in various ways? I decided to turn that around on me and put myself in the driver's seat of myself. So instead of waiting for someone else to perform or to deliver, that I put it on myself. And first of all, of course, that takes the pressure off of him. It takes, nagging, right, off of him. And it also helped me and my, what do they call it? Starts with an A. Not authority, agency over your own life. And I think this is what women are taught to do or encouraged to do in the strong, independent woman. But I don't think it's always understood or really taken up in the full sense of the meaning. And that's a whole nother talk. Number 2, I decided to truly work on feeling gratitude and to focus on the positives in my life rather than what I lacked. I know there's tons of stuff out there these days and for a long time about gratitude. And, I bought the books, I bought the journals, and they just never really sunk in, or they did for a little while and then it fizzled away. And I would go back to my previous state of mind of what I was lacking rather than really seeing how great my life was, or just simply being grateful for the simple things in life and being in the moment. And there are many great books out there, but I'll get to, I think it's still point number 5. Nope, number 4. I simplified the list a little bit. Number 4, and we'll get to that in a moment, was really what brought that home for me finally. That I was able to keep that state way more consistently, like where I might have been able to do that for stints of time that was 10% of my life or year in total. I can do that where I'm more than 80 to 90% of my life now, let's just say over the span of the year in total. And so just an enormous difference. So stay tuned for number 4. Number 3, I decided to be open to a new plan for life, that God might have plans for me other than what I wanted. And this took years to settle into. I'll be honest, but starting with this thought, at least, just the thought can kind of break that surface a little bit and allow that opportunity for that to grow. So by doing that, by just initially being open to more of God's plan for my life rather than my plan, I released myself from tremendous frustration, angst, anxiety, and heartache, because you can create and recreate and rekindle heartache by having a vision of your life that is not what's actually happening, that you're longing for. And so you're creating grief that's all in your imagination. It's not something that you've actually lost because it hasn't come to fruition, but you're creating the sense of loss in every moment that you're thinking that you don't have that. It's kind of mind-blowing. And it took me quite a while to get out of that thought process. Now, doing the prior things, step 1 and step 2 particularly, that got me in the sense of having self-agency. And I want to really point out that this self-agency wasn't to be separate from my husband. It wasn't to be the strong, independent woman within a relationship. This was all in the mindset of, I want to be with my husband. Life is challenging no matter what. Thankfully, I had that sense in me that, life is going to be challenging no matter what. Sure, my husband and I are going through a rough patch, but I want to be with him. I see my future with him, and I want to do what I can to make our relationship smoother, get past this point, and I'm willing to see if there's something in me that needs to be changed in order to do that. He has been there for me in life in other very traumatic situations, like I mentioned in the previous podcast with the breakup of my family of origin. And he is an absolutely amazing support to me as a person. But I would say he's the type of man that women, and I think we were raised in my generation to want, that he's ideal in that sense where, to me at least, where he's still a very strong presence. He guides our family, but he's also extremely supportive, not just financially, but emotionally. And for my growth and well-being, he's been there to help me through trials, to help me to get not only the family stuff, but trials in business, basically being my coach, personal growth, coaching me in health and wellness, and again in business, and just life stuff, that he is, I think, really, in a sense, the ideal of what I think I would say the overarching themes of feminism aimed to build a man, if I might take that liberty to say that. And fortunately, I took the time during this real rough patch to essentially meditate upon the issue. And like I said, if you're wondering, like, what are more the step by step, what did you do to get to these points so you could do something that's more customized for you, let me know and I'll make a mini course on that. But thankfully, I took the time to realize that absolutely I want to be together with him. Life is going to be challenging no matter what. And I want to be with the person that's my best friend, amazing support, lover. We have a lot of fun together. And sure, we're going through a rough patch, but it doesn't mean that we can't get through it. So that was a little bit of a segue, a long segue to explain a number of things. I don't need to summarize. So what is number 4? Because like I said, number 4 is really like that soothing balm that kind of helped bring it all together. And it's like, if you've been sick for a long time, you have a really, you have a cold that turns into fever and flu, and then as you're coming out of it, you get the sinus infection and it gets caught in your chest, and you're like, when is this going to end? And then you just find that magical balm or syrup or something that just really helps take all the rest of it away. Maybe you found stuff that helped you along the way with each sort of symptom, but it's the final remedy that cleans it all up. And this is what number 4 was. And this, honestly, this took me quite a while to get to. What the number 4 is, I started reading the Bible every day. And that was the thing, like I said, it was the healing balm that just kind of helps to clean all the rest of it up and really get to the core of so many of the issues. And in summary, I'll tell you really all what that did for me. But it was, and it still is, what has gotten me to the next level, the next phase. And anyway, I have it in the summary, so hold on a second for that. So I started with a 3-month dedication, and I saw, and most of all felt, significant changes in myself. I did see change in myself, and then I saw the reflection coming back in my husband. Now, remember, I didn't say anything like, I've been doing this for us, for our relationship, I've been changing. Did you notice this? I just made the changes and made sure to observe what were the reactions. Now, if you'll note, all these things I did were for my own personal growth. Now, I did have the mindset of, I want to stay in my marriage. How can I change? No, just with the objective that I want to stay in my marriage, and knowing that I could only affect myself. And mind you, they weren't things like, well, I know he likes me to cook more, so I'm going to cook more. Or I know he likes me to rub his back more, so I'm going to do that. Because I knew I had to make deeper changes in myself. So the changes then were very genuine, and they helped in an overall sense throughout my life. And what I noticed were positive changes in the reactions from my husband as well. And deep down, what it came down to is I was addressing deeper issues that could have, if I didn't take the time to address actually the deeper issues, as you know, they come up later in life and often worse, right? It's like a health issue. If you don't get to the bottom of it earlier in life, it rears its ugly head later in life in a much worse situation. So looking back, in summary, I saw, fortunately, at that point in life, because I really took the time to consider what was going on. And I decided, I basically saw that I could continue to do the pattern that I was in and was familiar with, and it was miserable and it was predictable, and I could keep going through the roundabout of, feeling miserable, frustrated, and then taking it out on my husband or us kind of having that friction, right? Or I could take another path. And I knew that that path included a future with my husband, and or at least that was the objective, that was the goal. But that I also had to make changes that were focused on what I could do, and were genuine changes that got to my objective was to get to the core of the issues. And what I found is I had to go take an entirely different path, that I couldn't necessarily see what was ahead, and trust in God that what was ahead was for me. And it was really a leap of faith, and I think essential. If I hadn't done that, I think we would have really been torn apart by all that was going on, and it was certainly clearly headed in that direction. So in the end, I know that, I mean, I'm a very, very different person from early on. I know there's a certain maturity, I would say, is the difference. And but to put it in more contextual terms, I no longer feel such deep heartache that I experienced. And later, when I had other experiences that really were very difficult and really stirred up feelings of heartache, I could get through them better. I flow through life better. I can feel and express love more fully. I can feel gratitude much more often. Like I said, I bought the journals, I did all that, and it just, it didn't sink in. But I can definitely more genuinely feel gratitude these days. Fear and anxiety have decreased tremendously. And most of all, and especially as it pertains to this topic, I feel in more harmony and in love with my husband and trusting in God. And, you know, there really isn't enough time, you know, there is in a series of podcasts to really express all of what that means. But if it's basically a 180 from anxiety and fear and depression and just feeling miserable, and then on top of that having the conflict with my husband, to feeling open and just able to receive and be more loving and in gratitude, and really a lifting of heavy emotions. It's hard to even explain like how light you can feel by comparison. And I think a big part of it is fear and anxiety as well. And I'm hoping that I'm conveying well enough the contrast between the before and after. So, ladies, I know that that can be a lot to consider, especially when you feel that he hasn't been participating, that it's his, you know, maybe he even committed to doing certain things that is not following through. But it's holding on to those thoughts that keep you stuck in the situation you're in. And so I had to consider, am I going to change, attempt to change myself and see if that makes things better? Because I'm going to encounter, life is going to be challenging no matter what. And I do want to be in life with my husband. And I'm extremely glad that I did that, not only for our marriage, but I feel so much further along maturity wise, mentally, emotionally in life than I was before. And I don't know if I would have gotten to this state if I hadn't. I think I could have gotten there sooner with if I tweak a few things. And if you want to know what that is, I can elaborate on that someday, or maybe in the mini course. But if you really are finding yourself in a rough patch, I really encourage you to just give it a try. Because this is, I think, a general recipe that can help with that for sure. Yeah. So I could say so much more. And I'm trying to just convey the immense before and after difference. And hopefully that was enough to convey to you. Because I know it can feel like you're taking on a lot to, you know, when you feel like you've already been giving so much. But, you know, I guess, well, let me know if you'd like a mini course on more of the details. Otherwise, I'm going to keep rambling. So I love hearing from you all. If this really struck a chord with you, please leave a comment. Either way, ladies and guys, I know that, this is a topic that affects each of us very, very differently. And this is clearly for the ladies. And the guys, I appreciate you chiming in and letting me know that what resonates. I think it's a way for us women to hear the male voice without it being a person that triggers us. And I don't like to use pop terms, but there we go. And so your input really helps as well. Keeping it respectful, of course, that always helps for your voice to be more well received. And of course, if someone came to mind while you were listening to this that you think who would enjoy it, benefit from it, please send it their way. And if you're in this stage and you're like, Tara, that sounds like it worked for you and I'd like to get there, I have no idea even where to go from here, hit me up in the description below. I have a way to connect with me. You can send me a quick chat, text question. We can also connect and do a video chat. I would love to help you out because I know the difference that it made in my life and in my marriage. So take care, everybody, and have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.